someone seems like they're in trouble, they probably are.
This is a story with a happy ending, I promise. It's a recount of some unsettling events I went through during my college years, as well as the most amazing example of the bro sixth sense I have ever witnessed. So, without further ado, meet Kevin. Kevin was a colleague of mine and was in the same group as me, which meant we had maybe 5 or 6 subjects per year together. Kevin was odd. Not that there was anything wrong with him, physically. He was adorable. A bit nerdy, a bit on the shorter, scrawny side with blonde hair, big blue eyes, and like 3 fluffy hairs on his chin instead of facial hair. If I had to compare him to something, I'd say he looked like a cute, soft baby chicken. If baby chickens were mentally inclined to grow into serial killers. More on that later. At first, I didn't really notice him. There were a lot of people in my class. Everything was new, and I personally did not know anyone, except for a guy named Harper, whom I knew from my sports days, as we often competed against each other, exchanged colorful insults on the track, and then go get drinks together. Harper will be important later on. As I've said, I only knew Harper there, and there were only 6 other girls in my class, as I've attended classes that held little interest among the female college population. During that time, I made friends and got real chummy with 3 more geeky guys. Zachary, whom I even casually dated for a short time. Steve, we realized our mothers went to college together too, which equaled instant friendship. And Rick, with whom I shared many interests. So, to count it down, important guys so far. Harper, former sports competition adversary. Zachary, casually went out for a bit. Steve, chill guy, insta friend. Rick, nerd to end all nerds, but a well of interesting trivia. Awesome guy. These are important. These would later become my personal army. And then, there was Kevin. Damn cute Kevin, whom I made the mistake of asking if he had any notes picked up from the first half of a lecture I missed because I overslept. In Kevin speak, "Hey, you got the notes from this morning?" apparently translated into, "I have interest in you, oh magnificent Kevin. Nothing would make me happier than knowing I have caught your eye, so please, make sure I am never left without your presence again, for I cannot bear it." I borrowed his notes, partially copied them, and returned his notebook back. What I didn't see was that Kevin then sniffed the notebook when I had my back turned. Zachary noticed it first, and snort-laughed about it later, because my first reaction to it when he told me was to sniff myself and see if I stank or something. I was young and naive then, so the sniffing was less what's wrong with him and more what's wrong with me. And that's where it all went downhill. Over the next few weeks, Kevin would always be there, never talking to anyone precisely, just kind of staring at me when we were in class, when we had breaks and went out for coffee to the shop outside. Then he started showing up for classes we did not attend together, and said he simply arrived too early for his later classes. He never participated. He just sat there in the back. Also, Kevin had sort of an aura about him. Like, you didn't have to look at the door to know when he entered the room. You just felt the eyes in the back of your head and kind of wished for a shower. Anyway, I didn't worry too much, until one day I went to the women's bathroom during a break. I did my business, went to the front section to wash my hands, and in came Kevin. I was alone. Kevin turned, closed the door behind him, and locked it. Needless to say, I was confused and unsure of what to do, so I just stared at him and asked if he needed something. "Hi," he said, then proceeded with, "How are you?" Like he hadn't just locked himself in the women's bathroom with me for no fathomable reason. I realized something was very, very wrong and attempted not to panic, managing to keep a nonchalant expression and turn towards the mirror so I could still see him and pretend to fix my makeup. "Fine," I said, and spoke no more. I could see Kevin fidgeting, playing with the key nervously, and after a long and uncomfortable silence, an eternity really, I heard loud banging from the other side of the door. It was Harper and Steve. Harper yelled something like, "Kevin, get your scrawny ass over here and open that door, or I swear to God, in the next 10 seconds, the door ain't going to be the only thing I'm breaking." I could hear Steve behind him, sounding a bit panicked, telling him to move since he managed to get the spare key. Kevin paled and stepped away, the key he had falling somewhere to the floor. Steve and Harper unlocked the door, and Harper jumped on Kevin like a damn primate and knocked him to the floor, while Steve and Rick, who was there as well, got inside and all but dragged me out of the bathroom area. None of them wanted to tell me what or why or how any of that happened, but I pushed at the weakest link, Rick, when we were alone, and found out that a whole hour prior to all of that, Rick overheard Kevin asking one of the on-campus students, the guys who get some extra cash if they help with paperwork, fixing and cleaning the campus, for the ladies' bathroom key and paying him for it. Rick didn't know why the hell Kevin would need that key, but knew that Kevin was a weirdo, so he figured it couldn't be good. Later on, Steve was looking for me and asked Rick if he had seen me, and stuff kind of clicked for Rick. They asked around, and people told them they saw me go to the bathroom area, and I didn't come out yet. Moore confirmed that they saw Kevin going there too, and joked that we must have had a makeout session. Steve immediately connected the dots. Harper overheard him talking to Rick, and they went to break me free from Kevin's affections, while Steve ran to get the extra key from the janitor. Kevin appeared with a lightly black eye in class 2 days later, just wishing to forget the whole thing. I pretended he did not exist. I wish this was the end of it. Maybe a week or two went by. I figured he learned his lesson. He's leaving me alone. But then he got the wind in his sails back for some reason, and proceeded with attempting to sit next to me in class. He was so insistent that Zachary got involved, and now the guys, Harper, Zachary, Steve, and Rick, made a timetable, so 2 and 2 would attend classes at all times when I was there, so each could sit on either side of me. I never asked any of this of them. They insisted. After a few failed attempts, Kevin gave up and settled for sitting in the back, glaring at my back and the other 2 guys on duty that day. I wish this was the end of it. 2 weeks later, Kevin didn't show up for class, or left early. I hoped he'd found some other interests and that it was finally over. Hell no. I noticed Kevin was now following me to the bus station. It took just one time to see him standing inconspicuously behind the newspaper stand to freak out and call Steve, as he lived nearby. Steve picked me up and drove me home. The next morning, Harper called me around 9 and went, "Are you in my class at 10 today?" Yeah. "Right, pack your shit and wait for me at the end of your street. Kevin is waiting for you at the bus station. Steve just called me." This went on for some 5 days as the guys extended their bro services to now accompanying me literally at all times, before, during, and after class. Just to point out yet again, I'm eternally grateful for it. These 4 dude bros of mine were like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. All business and vengeance, and it was amazing, and probably saved me from a lot more problems with cute Kevin. That day, Kevin showed up to class looking somewhat roughed up, but now stared at me with so much hate I could barely cope, and finally, after some sound advice from Harper and Rick, decided to bring this shit to college authorities. The pro-dean immediately transferred Kevin to a completely different group, so our classes never overlapped again. I stopped seeing Kevin all the time and reached my final year in college. By now, Zachary and Steve moved away. Harper finished it early and no longer attended classes, so it was only me and Rick now, but it was okay since Kevin was no longer there. I wish this was the end of it. Rick and I finished college, graduated, and decided to celebrate by visiting a medieval fair in Rick's hometown that summer. We agreed to get some drinks for old time's sake. All was well. We had a great time as we toured the fair a bit, and suddenly Rick, the sweet, polite Rick, goes, "Son of a bitch, Ain't that fucking Kevin? 'Twas fucking Kevin. Goddamn cute Kevin is there, staring at us, then turns on his heel and leaves. We saw him a few more times. I started to panic, thinking he was following me again. So Rick was already dialing a few of his friends to come over. But Kevin suddenly got lost, and I never ever saw him again. Carry on, Kevin, you creepy little chicken. Hope you learned to function in society by now. Almost a year ago, I took a job as night security for one of the buildings that houses several offices. Pay is not really much, but the proximity of the location from my house is what I really like. I usually just leave my car at home and take a 2-mile walk to and from work. I've always prided myself in being fit, so this was a great excuse for taking a brisk night walk. My shift doesn't start until 11 p.m., but I am often in the office an hour early. I'd clock in at 10, make my first cup of coffee for the night, and then chat a bit with the other security personnel. My schedule is pretty predictable, and one can tell what time it is just by knowing where I'd be. The building I'm assigned to is about 5 floors high with basement parking. Several offices are housed in this building, with one of them also operating a night shift. There are no more than 15 people in this particular office, and they spend most of their time inside. I have very little to no interaction with these people, except on a few occasions where my help was needed. I started my round promptly at 11, and with a flashlight and my radio in hand, I'd make my way down to the basement parking lot and move 1 floor at a time, terminating on the building's roof deck. I usually stayed there the longest, as I liked the cool breeze and the quietness of the place. More often than not, the roof deck is pitch dark and only illuminated by the surrounding buildings. I've heard several stories from the other security personnel about some strange goings-on in this building. I didn't really pay much attention to them, as they seemed to be rather exaggerated. Case in point, the story of a boy who apparently had a knack for suddenly showing himself half-bodied to the night security and employees. Seeing a half-bodied boy will surely freak anyone out, but in my 10 months there, I'd have yet to encounter him. There are stories as well of whispering and disembodied voices, and again, I have yet to hear these. Things changed, however, just recently. No, I haven't encountered the half-bodied boy, nor have I heard the disembodied voices, yet the experience I had left me wondering just what the heck I was seeing, and to be honest, I'm still not too sure. The first instance took place towards the end of February this year, February 24th to be exact. It was a Sunday. There are 3 of us on night shift, with one taking the weekends off. This time, however, the other security guy called in sick, leaving me the only personnel there. There's not much to do on weekends anyway, as the only office that has a night operation is also closed. I did my usual round, ending up on the 4th floor, a little after 1 in the morning. As I walked from one end of the building towards the other, I saw someone enter one of the small offices. I didn't receive a memo from the building administrator indicating someone was coming in that night. Was a break-in happening on my watch? I couldn't let that happen. I went back to the security office, took our service pistol, and cautiously approached the said office. I checked the door, and it was secure. No sign of forced entry. I shone the light inside. Nothing was amiss, and definitely no one was inside. Baffled, I went back to the security room and ran the closed-circuit cameras. There was indeed someone, but the strange thing was, the figure just passed through the solid glass door. Even with the grainy quality of the footage as I zoomed in, it was clear that someone passed through the door. That someone was like a solid dark mass with no discernible features, other than what seemed like a small head on a rather large torso. I was reluctant to file an incident report given the circumstances, so I left it at that. I didn't even mention this to the other security personnel. A few weeks passed without any further incident, until about 2 weeks ago. As I was doing my usual rounds, I got a call from the other security. He told me that someone was at the door of one of the offices, the same office where I had my strange encounter. He asked me if I could go and check it out, and as I got there, I radioed back and told the other security that there was no one there. He insisted that there was, and that he could clearly see the other on the monitor. I was so annoyed at the thought of this dude pulling my leg, so I went back to the security room to get him to level with me. When I got there, he showed me the recording. There really was someone in front of the office door, just inches away from me. The same solid mass with a very small head and large torso. The funny thing is, in that footage, I seemed to be talking to whatever was there. The other security did not see it as an apparition, and to this day, he still thinks it was a real person I was talking to, and that I was the one pulling his leg. Well, what the heck did I see?